TV10 newsroom, Dylan Bishop has his ears on because it's time for him to pay back Phil and to a lesser extent me, I guess. By the way, the Mega Millions jackpot this weekend, nobody hit it Friday, so tomorrow it goes to $944 million.
It's time to buy a ticket then, Rob.
And Powerball is now at $103 million.
So if you can hit them both, that's a pretty good way to.
It's not a bad weekend.
Not a lot of time to shelter that money before the end of the year.
Not a lot of time. You'd have to make a lot of donations quickly. Via telephone, Phil McCoy from Ameriprise Financial and the Mirius Group of Financial Advisors on Winchester Avenue, where he does work with John Everson. Good morning, Mr. Phil.
Good morning, guys. How are you all?
This is the voice of a man whose team has lost 2 straight games in horrible fashion.
I like how you do that in the third person, Mr. Steelers.
I am, but I've kept my spirits up. And Phil wears these.
It's a one-way street.
Phil wears these, man. I no longer, like I said before, when I was a little younger, when the Steelers would lose, my whole week was ruined. And this game here, I didn't even really watch it. And this would have never happened to me when I was younger. I go to 5 o'clock Saturday Mass. I'm one of the ushers there. So I went to church, left at 4:30. I think the game kicked off at 4:30. And then when I came home, we were hosting our football coach's Christmas party at my house that we do each year. And so that was starting at 7. So I had the game on and just kind of observing it as I was, going around helping my wife get the house ready and whatever. We only had about a half an hour to get, everything really ready for 7. So it was just kind of like a detached watching of it. And I opened up my phone app for the text, and all of my friends who are Steeler fans were sending me hate-filled, self-loathing messages about being a Steeler fan, not the least of which was Phil's. How you doing, Phil?
Look,
you covered?
I'm good. I'm doing good, but I do get over it fairly quick. It's kind of bothersome to call back in, and normally Dylan answers the phone. It's early in the morning, and he's, "Hey, Phil, how you doing?" That's about as much as I get. But I think he was singing when he answered the phone this morning. It was like, "Hello, Phil." Good morning, Vietnam. He's all smiles. I could hear his smile over the phone.
Well, the Steelers still have the division right now. They've got to beat the Chiefs and the Bengals and the Ravens, and they control their own destiny if they do that. If they lose one and the Ravens lose both, then the Ravens will take the division. And then I guess there's some other things that come down if they each go 1-1 as to what happens. So,
you mean if the Ravens win twice?
It was a tough day.
So
it was a tough day. It was a tough day.
Dylan, did you have anything to say to Phil when you got his call?
He's not quite wrong about the almost singing on the phone. Good morning, Phil.
Yeah, I didn't know who it was. Who is this guy?
Put on my customer service.
I debated on not calling until like 8:35, but I said, no, you know what? Dylan's always classy. When I call in, 8 of the last 9 times now, 8 of the last 10, he's always answered the phone. He's listened to my smile, and so I got to call in and take my comeuppance and let him gloat a little bit. He didn't really gloat a lot though, not much. I mean, I guess there's really nothing I could have.
But Dylan, did you catch that shot? Phil managed to slip in there. The 8 of the last 9. Now it's 8 of the last 10.
Yeah, I should have just went all the way in and Mr. Costanza and been like, I got a lot of problems with you people. You're going to hear about it.
Festivus for the rest of us.
Yeah. No, don't forget, Bill. Festivus is not over until you pin me.
That's right. You got to pin Dylan when you guys wrestle in the last half hour. Got to get the TV 10 cameras on that, man. Bill, you were a wrestler when you were younger, weren't you? Bill Stubblefield?
No. We only had one sport, basketball, from a small town.
Did you ever get in a fight when you played basketball?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
that
counts.
That counts.
That counts.
I played basketball like a football, like a running back. So
5 fouls and you're out.
5 fouls.
Saturday was just nice because it was great to see the Ravens play the way they should against a team that they're clearly better than.
Go ahead, Phil. Go ahead.
What am I supposed to say? I mean, they just annihilate. I really can't say much. Yeah, for that day, they were better. They were better than the Steelers, and it was clear. It was painfully obvious that a couple days ago the Ravens were better than the Steelers that day. But I'm still hopeful if the Steelers, and I don't know why I feel this way, but I feel so good about them beating Kansas City on Christmas Day. And if they Steelers still win that division, there may be a matchup in Pittsburgh with the Ravens, and that's going to be it, man. I'm telling you, I hope Mike Tomlin's getting the game plan ready, because the one we had the other day wasn't very good. But there's a lot of scenarios where the first round of the playoffs could be Baltimore and Pittsburgh, or Pittsburgh back in Baltimore, which I wouldn't like. But it was an ugly day. It was hard. It was tough to watch. But I sat and watched it. And
what about yesterday's game?
Dylan.
Yesterday's game, Phil, the Commanders. Did you watch that game?
No, I didn't watch that either, but I had my Commander friends, or whatever their nickname is now, text me about how great they were and how super they were. And come to find out, they got to play against Kenny Pickett. Of course they won. They played against Kenny Pickett. That's what happens with Kenny. But now they're going to the Super Bowl, so all my friends, it's going to be a Commander Ravens Super Bowl, and they're both going to win. It was a rough weekend. I'm glad Christmas is coming
Kenny
up.
Pickett wasn't bad on Sunday. He
Pickett
wasn't
was
Jalen
14
Hurts.
for 24.
He wasn't bad though.
I didn't watch it, so I can't really say. But
I did.
That line looked a lot like it did last year.
They scored 33
14
points.
for 24.
They scored 33 points, and he led most of those because Hurts got injured early, and
He got hurt.
yeah, he got hurt. And then Kenny hit what was his name, Devontae Smith,
yeah.
and he hit him right in the hands. It was a perfect pass over them. If Smith catches that ball, Washington never gets it back. The game's over.
Yep.
And he dropped it. That's not the quarterback's fault. That's the receiver's fault. It wasn't off target. It was completely in stride. There wasn't a defender close to him, and he just flat out dropped it. But that's football. You make plays or you don't. NFL games come down to a single play a lot of times, man. And if you don't make it, you
Russell
don't win.
Wilson throwing to the wrong person for a touchdown.
Or the fumble at the 4-yard
would've
line.
ran that in.
Right? He ran
or the fumble.
that scrambled down to the 4, and he fumbles it at the 4. That's football. You make a play or you don't. And if you don't, you lose.
Yep.
Because the vast majority of
Well,
NFL games are one-possession games.
Moving on to America's child, Patrick Mahomes on Wednesday. Big game.
All
Big
right.
game. They win that, we're going to return our fortunes around.
Let's talk money, Philip. We are down to
Let's do
our
it.
final week of the year, basically, here on the 23rd. So I heard the definition of a Santa Claus rally now is the last 3 trading days of the year and the first 2 of January. Has that always been the definition of the Santa Claus rally, Phil? I always thought it was like the whole month of December.
Kinda. No, it just depends. If we get a run up in our markets at any point at mid to late December and early January, we'll call it a Santa Claus rally. I don't know that there's a real true definition for it, but anytime we get a push toward the end of the year, we'll call it a Santa Claus rally, and hopefully we get that this year. That PPI report, which we really didn't get to, or PCE report, the last of the alphabet soup, really gave our markets hope. Because remember, so Jerome Powell spoke on Wednesday. We had the sell-off. Thursday, we kind of choppied around a little bit. We didn't continue the sell-off, which was positive. Friday, we got another inflation report, the one that the Federal Reserve says that they prefer, the personal consumption expenditures, and that was better than what was expected. So we have to remember that on Wednesday when Jerome Powell spoke, and I so get tired of talking. As much as I like the guy and defend him, I do get tired of talking about him, but it is what's important. They're data-driven, and there's no better example of that than in September or in the fall. They met and said, hey, our dot plot says 4 rate cuts for 2025. Our market soared, and it ran. And then come this meeting, they said, well, maybe 2, maybe 1, maybe 2, because inflation's not doing what we thought it was going to do. They are data dependent, and that data can change. And within 2 days, it sort of changed the market's mind a little bit, and we recovered a lot of what we lost on Wednesday, especially on the NASDAQ. It looks like this morning some of that would continue on, but it is data dependent. And it is fluid. It's very liquid to between what they think is going to happen in the future and what actually happens. The most important thing to remember for all investors out there, though, that we are in a decreasing rate environment. The only question at the moment, because there was no talk of rate increases, the only question at the moment is how long will that take? And that's going to be data dependent. of course. And so what we've got was mixed signals last week.
Go ahead, John.
I was just thinking, for next year, this is the last show of this year, 8:30 Mondays, there's a new drinking game. It's the Jerome Powell drinking game. Every time Phil says Jerome Powell, somebody takes a shot. Nobody will be awake at the end of the at the end of the segment.
I think Bill would like that.
Yeah. No, there's nothing wrong with that. We'll applaud him.
Bill's got a self-driving car. He doesn't have to drive home with a problem.
There you go.
Hey, Phil, I want to talk to you about something in regards to gambling. All right, and give me a second to tie this in. So this weekend, we have our coach's Christmas party at my house. We hosted, and a lot of coaches talking about placing parlay bets via their iPhone app with the different gambling apps that are available to you. And one of the coach's sons, who's, 12, 13 years old, was talking about some bets he placed on his phone through the gambling app, which I'm guessing is, you probably have to be 18.
Do you have to have a credit card?
So, you have to have an account.
Okay.
Right? So anyway, then I hear this morning on Jim Cramer, who, if you've watched CNBC, you know all the shows with Jim Cramer and whatever. Jim Cramer's talking about people on these. Was it the Robinhood app, Phil? Was that the one where people were doing all the meme?
Yes.
Okay, so on the Robinhood app,
Yes.
that away from sports betting now, so many young people are getting into stock gambling, right? Where they're buying stocks and trading them. And Kramer said holding them long-term means selling them by the afternoon, okay? And he said, and I feel for these people, a lot of them are young males, because they're losing fortunes. I guess Robinhood put out the stats on it, and how many of these mostly young males are losing their shirts on these stock apps. They're getting in and out of stocks, and they're and you know the terminology better than I am in regards to leveraging money and the options and the and things that you can do when you're buying and leveraging more purchases than you actually have the money for. And these kids are getting cleaned out because they think this is easy stuff and they don't know what they're doing. And that's what Kramer said. I feel for these people because they're losing fortunes and they have no idea what they're playing with or what they're doing, Phil.
They have no clue. And there's a story that we had talked about, which is tragic, and it was around the meme stock with GameStop, if we remember all of that. And there's this huge danger. I can't believe here's someone coming that doesn't like regulations, that would like more regulations on some of this stuff. But there was a young man that was in college. Apparently, he had struggled through college a little bit, felt disappointed to his parents, blah blah blah. Had done a dual purchase, if you will. He sold calls and bought puts on an individual stock. What he didn't know was what he had done, no matter what happened, and you can do this, no matter what happened, he was going to break even. It didn't matter what happened. He basically just hedged his bet to where at the end of the trade, selling calls, buying puts, he was even. It was going to be a wash. The problem, though, in this instance, it was over all these options come to fruition on Fridays. When you buy something, you buy it immediately. Your money is gone the second that you buy it. When you sell something, now this has changed slightly. It's quicker now. But when you sell something, it could take anywhere from 1 to 3 days before you get your money, correct? So on Friday, he checks his I'm pretty sure it was Robinhood, checked his Robinhood app, and he was in the hole for $100,000. The only reason he was in a hole was because he hadn't been paid for what he had done at the end of this option trade. So over the weekend, he's terrified. He's got to tell his parents, hey, I did something and I don't have the money for it. Well, in reality, they won't let you do something that you don't have the money for. You either have to have stocks to back it up or mutual funds or equities or cash. You can't sell something short that you don't have the money to cover. Well, over the weekend, there's no one at Robinhood or SetApp to take his phone call. So when the trading day ended on Friday, he sees I owe upwards of over $100,000. But on Monday, his sale came into fruition and he got paid. But over the weekend, he was so distraught, the poor kid committed suicide. So come Monday, Tuesday, they found a letter, and he owed all this money to Robinhood. They get into his account, and he didn't owe him anything, and nobody could figure out why until they traced the timeline. And on Friday, it did appear as if he owed them hundreds of thousands of dollars because he simply didn't know what he was doing. No matter what happened, he was going to break even. That Monday he broke even. Unfortunately, the kid had already committed suicide. And there's a lot of dangers that people that simply don't know what they're doing. And we're not talking about an 18-year-old that sat down with their parents and talked and said, hey, I earned $1,000 over the summer. What should I do with it? And they're buying a mutual fund, or they're buying an exchange-traded fund, or buying one stock, buying Amazon or something along those lines, and they're holding it until I get out of school. You know, that is safe, that is normal. It can be, you know, if you do it on an equity position or an individual stock, it can be risky. It's going to go up and down, but you're not short selling things, and you're not putting yourself in a position to where you're going to lose everything you've got. It is an informed purchase, at least to an extent, and that's not what these kids are doing. These kids are getting on Reddit, and they're getting on message boards, and they're talking to their buddy in class or whatever it may be, and they're buying pink sheet stocks. They're not publicly traded stocks, so they're not liquid. You can't exactly sell them whenever you want, and they're putting every penny that they've got into it. And in most cases, it's not a lot of money. You know, it's kind of harmless, like a slap on the wrist. You made a mistake, and now you owe, you know, you lost your $2,000 that you worked all summer for. Okay, lesson learned and moved on, but it's happening so much. And I think some kids are doing this with student loans, where they're taking out student loans or putting the money into the bank, which you can do, and then pay your tuition with it, where they're getting these student loans and they're taking their cash from these student loans and they're investing it. I'm doing investing as an air quote, and they're doing extremely risky purchases, buy, sales, option trading. And on one hand, they're not liquid. They can't get the money back out of it to either pay off their loans or pay their tuition like they're supposed to, or even worse, they're losing every single penny of it. So there's a ton of dangers with this, with these kids sometimes, you know, working through their parents' name. I've heard of that, where they're, you know, the kid said, hey, I can't get this own account. I want to invest. Mom and dad's so happy. Little do they know they can just get an UPMA account or a uniform transfer minors account. But what they're doing is they're doing it in mom and dad's name. They're going deeper than what a kid should be allowed to go. There's a lot of dangers in this. And on the surface, these things aren't bad. You know, if you have $500 and that you've earned over the summer, or you did babysitting and you want to invest it, put it into a Roth account, buy a mutual fund, all of that is great. It's prudent, but they're going a step further, and they are gambling with stuff that they don't understand. They're betting on football games like I would the Steelers, and that's why I don't do it, because I don't see clearly. I don't see clearly. I'm saying already, after they lost to the Ravens, they're going to beat Kansas City on Wednesday. I don't gamble because of that reason. I'm smart enough to know that I don't see clearly when it comes to that sort of thing. So I'm not gambling, but these kids are, and it's very dangerous.
Phil, you used a term that I'd not heard before: pink sheet stocks. What are you talking about?
That's an old school term, but pink sheet stock is one that's just not large enough. It doesn't have the market yet to purchase on the exchange. So if you buy it, you have to old school go find a buyer or a seller in order to purchase it. So you think of a company that may not be large enough, and you're doing it by mail. And now you don't have to actually do it via mail, but that is what a pink sheet stock is. If you think of Wolf of Wall Street, if anybody ever seen that movie, which is a good movie, very crude, but a good movie, that's kind of what they were doing. They were selling non-listed stock. They were calling people up and having them buy these companies. And, you know, in some cases you get rich and hit a home run. Yeah, sure. You also hit the lottery sometimes too, but that's kind of what that is. We're not thinking of the Amazons and the Procter & Gamble and Exxons and Teslas of the world. They're companies that you haven't heard of, that they have stock. They're just not publicly traded because it's so lightly traded, and so therefore you have to buy it separate from the exchange. I
think OTC was another version of that, wasn't it, Phil?
Yeah, over the counter. Yeah. Over the counter, same thing. Yeah.
Not listed on the major exchanges. Dylan?
I think Phil hit a lot of it, but as a young person on the internet, I that saw a lot of the GameStop thing happen. I think that moment in time kind of broke the brains of a lot of young men on the internet when that happened, but it was such a once in a lifetime thing of everyone on this message board decided to rally together and let's just all buy this and pump up the stock price of it and make money, but everyone thinks that we can make this happen again. And the same thing happens with Bitcoin also, and cryptocurrency.
Yeah,
I'm seeing a lot of that. Almost a very similar thing.
Well, your generation, Dylan, invests a lot in cryptocurrency. I had lunch with a former player of ours, early dinner last week, and he was talking about investing money in. I like to put my money in crypto, and I just remember looking at him like, I hope that's just your play money, because it's hard to assign a value to that stuff that's realistic and long lasting.
Well, it is, and it's not as dangerous as doing the option trading, though. Because at least the crypto, it kind of works like a stock would work. So the worst that's going to happen is you're going to lose all of your money. But in the case of option trading, you could actually you could put your money into an account, sell something short, not understand what you're doing, and once you've sold it short, if it goes up in price, there's no end to how much money you could lose. So the option trading, which is surprising because as a financial planner, I have to have an additional training in order to sell options, in order to place options. I shouldn't say sell, but sell to place calls and puts, covered and uncovered. But you could do it an 18-year-old could do it on their phone without any training, without any background, without any questioning, as long as the money's there to cover that. But, something that I would say to any young person coming into children of clients and so forth that come up with some of these ideas, I've been doing this on my own, that's fine. Do it on your own, but don't listen to people. People don't tell you when they lose everything. People tell you when they put $100 in an investment and it turned $200, but they didn't tell you that they took that $200, put it in something else, and lost everything. They only tell you the good stuff. They don't tell you the bad stuff, and none of them do. So you only hear the good stories. It's like reviews, right? So you only get one side of the equation. Happy people don't make reviews, so you got to be careful when you're reading reviews, because only unhappy people go in and make a review for the most part. So it is very dangerous, and I am surprised that the regulation over that there hasn't been something that has stepped up and said that, hey, you guys can't do this, it's too dangerous. There's a lot of issues with it.
As a financial advisor, I'm going to guess a lot of your job is marriage counseling, where you're sitting down with a couple, and either the husband or the wife is really wants to be aggressive in investments, and the other one is really more comfortable with stuffing it in a suitcase and putting it under the bed.
Happens a lot, yes. And
where does that normally end up? Just money market and walk away?
No.
What's the compromise?
We put goals. There's typically a compromise, and in the event where there's not a compromise, say if we have a very aggressive person and one very conservative, where it doesn't end up as an overall moderate, we may even separate accounts. So think of a 401k and IRA, which is the bulk of the accounts that we have. But if it's in a IRA, whether it's Roth or traditional, those are individual accounts. So we would come to an agreement like, hey, Mrs. McCoy is going to be conservative while Mr. McCoy is very aggressive. So you guys are two separate investors. We may even have two separate financial plans for them on what they're trying to create. Even though they're married as one, we're kind of looking at them as two different people. Or if they can come to an agreement, if Mr. McCoy says, okay, I won't be as aggressive, Mrs. McCoy says, okay, I won't be as conservative, we'll just be a moderate overall. And that you're right, though, that does happen quite often where he and she doesn't match up with what they're trying to
jump in here, Phil. I need a quick Steelers-Chiefs prediction from you. 10 seconds. What do you got?
Big recovery, 24-16. Pittsburgh Steelers are going to beat the Super Bowl champions. Get back on track, baby.
All right, Dan. How do we get in touch with you today for more information?
You can reach us at 304-263-4343 or stop by and see us with an appointment at 1270 Winchester Avenue, right here, Martin.
I admire your optimistic spirit, Phil. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Talking about Merry Christmas, guys.